Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Military Money Manual Podcast. Spencer here with Jamie, and today we're talking about 3 things you can do to stop living paycheck to paycheck. 3 things that you can do right now, actionable steps to fix your financial mess up. I'm going to say mess up, Jamie, because we're rated non-explicit on Apple Podcasts, but I think we all know what I'm talking about.
Spencer, I'm fired up, man, because I think there's a lot of military families that are hurting. And I remember back to when we were younger, we had less money, less disposable income. And I want people to understand, with a little bit of tough love today, there's going to be some Jamie rants, I think, that you can control your situation. And I get there's emergencies. Like, I understand there's situations that are different, but you have to put your oxygen mask on and take care of yourself and your family now. And you can take ownership of a lot of these things that will help you regain control of your finances, help you be intentional about them, and stop the bleeding so that you can focus on being a better parent, being a better officer or an NCO, or being better at your career field, a better maintainer or a better logistician, a better truck driver. When you're stressed about money, it distracts from the mission. And that's why financial readiness is such an important thing for the leaders out there to talk about, and to make sure that people are out there aware of their options, aware of their benefits, aware of their protections they have, and just aware of what society is doing to you, where literally billions of dollars is thrown into your brain to try to influence your purchasing decisions. And look, I get it. I have Amazon Prime. We all succumb to the influencers every once in a while. But if it happens too often and it affects your finances, or you're stressed about finances, then it's happening too much. So like Spencer said, 3 things you can do about it right now. Number 1, we're going to delete all social media apps from your phone. This can be temporarily. And just like Smokey the Bear used to say, only you can prevent forest fires, and only you can control taking away the influence of these people that make money off of selling you things. They're selling you based on your ads, your browsing history. You're probably not deleting your cookies. You're probably not resetting your devices. You've all seen those ads about something that you talked to a friend about that you haven't even searched yet. And you can get rid of all of that by deleting those apps off your phone, or maybe not having a smartphone. I still have a smartphone, so no judgment. But when you take away the influence of things like social media apps, and you see the highlight reel of other people's life, then you're less influenced on overspending on vacation, overspending to make your house look perfect, overspending to buy this special thing for your kid or this new program or whatever. And there's a lot of goodness out there. But when you're bleeding in your finances, you have to prioritize and you have to choose. And a lot of that influence from social media and from the internet, we're just not even aware of what it's doing to our spending.
Yeah, the second thing, Jamie, is to create inconvenience in your life. So DoorDash, Uber Eats, any of the other delivery apps out there, delete them. Delete them from your phone. Don't use them. Make it hard for you to spend money. Don't do buy now, pay later plans. We've got a great episode with Lacey Langford about that. Switch to debit cards for a few months until you get, or as long as it takes until you get control, or use cash. I mean, it sounds crazy, but sometimes it takes crazy action to get yourself out of a terrible situation. You need to make it painful. You need to make it physically painful to spend money and easy to save. You need to automate your savings, and you need to make it super hard for you to spend money. I remember when I was trying to reset my finances when I was a young lieutenant. I was making basically a third of my paycheck. So I was getting about $3,000 a month, and $1,000 was going to student loan and Career Star loan repayments. It hurt a lot. And one of the things I did was I took my credit card and I froze it in a block of ice and put it in the freezer so that I couldn't use it. And eventually
Literally
I just
froze it in ice.
Literally froze it in ice. So I couldn't use it. And so I had to use my debit card. And then I did the actually intelligent thing and just canceled the card. And now with apps, you can go in and you can put a freeze on your credit card so you can't use it. So just start with that. Freeze your credit card in an app and put it away, put it in a sock drawer, don't use it, switch to a debit card. And why are you switching to a debit card? Because you want to make it hard to spend money. You want it to be painful. You want to see your checking account go down when you spend money, and you want to force yourself to slow down with your spending.
Spencer, there was a time, I think my second operational assignment, when I was struggling with overspending a little bit. And I had even, when we were in debt, when we were getting out of debt, first assignment, I put a sleeve, like the sleeve you get at a hotel, around my debit card that had some reminders about why my wife and I wanted to get out of debt and things like that. Another trick I did later, that second assignment that I started talking about, was I stopped carrying a card. And if I had an emergency or I needed gas and I didn't remember to grab the card, I could add a card to my Apple Pay. I could do that all on my phone and make a purchase if I needed to, but it took away the convenience of it. So all of these things, the credit card companies, the stores are making it easier and easier for you to spend without realizing that you're actually spending. So if you add a little bit of inconvenience factor intentionally back into your finances, it adds some friction into your spending habits, which is all so you can be more aware and more intentional of what you're doing. I believe personally that a lot of military families don't think they actually have control over what they spend. They blame inflation, which is a factor. They blame low pay, which can be a factor. They blame, non-working spouse. It's hard to maintain jobs as we move around, which can be a factor. But they forget that you actually have control over it. You can choose what type of car you get, what type of house you get, how much you spend on technology in your house, what type of furniture you get. You have decisions in all of this, and it's not just a victim of the system. Those are all factors, but you have ownership of your finances. So adding a little bit of intentionality and friction to it, man, it feels good to be on a rant, man. It's been a while, but adding a little bit of intentionality back to it, it helps you take ownership so that your future can be bright and your temporary sacrifices pay off one day, and you're going to build wealth and you're going to be more secure. You're going to be able to handle emergencies. And we're going to talk all about that in a minute, but adding a little bit of friction is really, really good in your life. You don't want to make it too easy to do things and then you just do it on autopilot and you're not aware of what you're doing.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the Comfort Crisis book, Jamie, by Michael Easter. Like, it's okay to do hard things. And in fact, we are better off when we do hard things. And I mean, that just gets to the core of like why people are just whiny little, I'm trying to think of a nice word to say and I can't, so I'm not going to say it, but you are creating this crisis by being comfortable, and you need to make yourself uncomfortable temporarily, just for a little while. For a lot of military families, it would, in 3 to 6 months, they could completely reset their financial situation and stop living paycheck to paycheck and start building real liquid wealth. And they don't want to because it's uncomfortable. And I get it. If you thought it was easy, you thought it was simple, you'd probably just do it, right? But that's what people don't realize is it is simple. And it can be easy as long as you embrace the suck.
Spencer, another thing that might speak to people is about the parents in the audience. Like for the listeners that are parents, think about the example you want to make for your kids. Do you want your children to be able to do hard things as well? Do you want them to be able to understand that things that are hard are good for them, that are going to make them better, that are going to teach them skills? Like you go on a hike that might be hard and you get sweaty, or do you just want them to like sit inside and never learn that kind of grit in their life? I think there's a lot there where parents want to be a good example and maybe they don't know how, but by introducing a little bit of uncomfortable situations, discomfort, and that friction, it's such a really good example for your kids. And also I think about when you start maybe working out again after a period of being too busy at work or getting out of your habit patterns, you can start a habit in the gym and you might not see anything the first day. You definitely won't the first day, even the first week. Maybe after a couple of weeks, you start to notice, a couple months in, other people start to notice. And maybe by 12 months of having a new gym routine and a new nutrition routine, you're a completely different person and you've literally changed your life in 12 months. And the same thing can apply here where you have to put in the discipline and the habits, and you're going to not see changes right away. But after a few weeks, after a few months, you have the potential and you will change your life after discipline.
I know that if you're listening to this podcast right now, if you're a U.S. military service member or a veteran or a military spouse, like you have grit. You have passion and perseverance towards a long-term goal. And grit is what keeps a person going when they feel down or when a task feels impossible. And it allows you to accomplish difficult tasks without giving up. Well, if you're in the military, you have accomplished difficult tasks. Like you've either made it through basic training or through an officer candidate program. And your job might be difficult as well. I mean, we like to make fun of Air Force finance or personnelists,
pilots. We get some slack sometimes too.
Just pushing paper, but like that's a thankless job. That can be hard in its own right. And so I know that if you're listening to this podcast, you have grit. and you'll be able to, to do hard things. And what we're asking you to do is actually not that hard in the long run, but you're going to benefit so much from it. And I think after listening to this episode, Jamie, if anybody ever reaches out to me and is like, I can't figure out how to get out of debt, how to stop living paycheck to paycheck, I just hope that they can listen to this podcast episode, because I know that they're capable of it. Like because the thing is with civilians, there's no filter there, right? Like you could have all kinds of different people in the civilian world, but in the military world, whether you're the active duty service member, guard, reserve, a veteran, a military spouse, like you are used to doing hard things. Even military spouses, especially military spouses. We like to joke that it's the hardest job in the military, but it really can be, because while the active duty service member is going out the door and going on a deployment with all of their friends and gets to go do the mission, the spouse is back home watching the home front, working, watching the kids, and doesn't have as much information probably as the service member, and might not have the same support network that the service member does, right? When the service member is deployed, at least in the Air Force, I mean, we're getting 3 square meals a day. We have access to a gym. We might be working 12 to 24-hour shifts, but at the end of it, we go back to our room, we sleep, we get up, we eat, we go to the gym, and then we go back to work. Meanwhile, the military spouses, they've got kids, they've got schools, they've got work, they've got family, they've got friends that can either be helpful or hindering in their goals. All that to say that if you're listening to this podcast and you're in the military community, we know that you have grit. We know that you can do hard things. And so what we're asking you to do here is really not that hard in the grand scheme of things. And it is going to radically change your life if you can just stick to it for a couple months, and you'll build those habits, you'll build those systems that are going to enable you to build long-term wealth. So Jamie, the 3 things that we talked about doing: delete social media apps from your phone, create inconvenience in your life, which is counterintuitive, but it's what you need to do right now. And then number 3, cancel all your subscriptions. So whether it's Netflix, HBO, Disney Plus, Spotify, Apple, Instacart, Paramount Plus, YouTube TV, music, all the music apps out there, Audible, Hulu, ESPN, Amazon Prime, cancel it. Cancel Amazon. No, cancel it. Cancel Amazon Prime. Delete the Amazon app from your phone. Drive to a store and buy something. Make your life inconvenient. Stop ordering everything online that you need. I guarantee that your monthly expenses will go down if you delete the Amazon app from your phone. And the next time you need something, you write it down, and then you make a list and you go to the BX, you go to the commissary, you pick it up in person. And guess what? If they don't have it, you probably don't need it in the first place. And you could probably make do without it for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. I can't remember who, I'm not going to credit myself for this, but one of the personal finance influencers out there was talking about they make a list. And so if there's something they need, they write it down, and then they set a reminder in their phone for 28 days later, 4 weeks later. And if they still need that thing in 4 weeks, like I'll give a silly example. We have broken 2 potato mashers in the last 5 years. We need a new potato masher. It took us like 6 months to replace the potato masher, mostly just because we kept forgetting it to add it to our cart. But it did not materially impact our life in any way, shape, or form by not having a potato masher. By the way, potato masher, $15. I feel like that's pretty expensive for a potato masher.
Spencer, I think that with the subscription thing, I think a lot of military families don't even know how many subscriptions they have. And I got it. Like there's credit cards that cover some of these, but not all of them. But let's say you have a credit card that covers Disney Plus and is completely free for you, then maybe you don't really need Netflix. And maybe your kids don't really need multiple options. Maybe you don't need YouTube TV. Maybe you don't need NFL Sunday Ticket. Every family has different priorities. But when you're in debt or you're bleeding in your finances, you're stressed about money, you and your spouse are fighting about money, think about what is really more important. And I can't imagine that Netflix is going to be high on the list. For example, we have 2 Pelotons. I've talked about them before, a bike and a tread. During this PCS, I canceled them because I wasn't using them for a couple months. Saved like $44 for 3 months. And for a lot of military families, they gladly take $120-ish, $132 or whatever that would add up to. Either way, like there are little things you can do. Like maybe you pause Netflix for a month and then you take it back before you go on vacation. Like you don't have to do it The reason they do auto subscribe, auto renewal, and all these things is to make it convenient for you to spend without realizing what you're doing. So you can take a little bit of ownership of that back. And whenever you are ready for those apps again, or you're going on vacation, or it's time to do a road trip across the country for your next PCS, I guarantee you the apps that you want will still be there. They'll be waiting for you. You can subscribe instantly anytime you want again when your finances are ready. And there might even be a discount code that makes it cheaper the next time. And in the meantime, find some free entertainment. Go to the park, get your kids outside, read a book like The Opt-Out Family or Taking Your Family Back, and some of those that are really good about the anxious generation. Great book for the parents out there.
Yeah, go to a library. There's like the MWR library system is fantastic. The Libby app, listen to a podcast. The amount of incredible free content that's out there is it's just crazy. And it's, it really is, you could easily fill months and months of entertainment with just free content.
Get an actual book, mind-blowing. Hey, Spencer, can I add like a 3.5 or number 4 here? I want to talk a little bit about the technology and the iPhones. Like, kids do not need a $1,600 iPhone, a $1,200 iPhone. If it's time for you to get your kid a phone, you can start with a cheaper phone. It could be a cheap Android. Like, they'll be okay. No offense. They will get over it. Or maybe it's not even a smartphone at all. Maybe it's a flip phone where they can text or you can call them. But like, your kids do not need a phone. And my family's going through this right now as middle schoolers and elementary age. Like, my middle daughter came home in first grade. I'm the only one without an iPhone. And while I don't think that was true, I do think there are a lot of first graders that have iPhones. And if your family is broke, your kids do not need iPhones.
Yep.
This is like a new thing that's happened in the last, I don't know, when were we in high school, 25 years or whatever, where people needed smartphones and they needed to track their kids and kids needed everything. Like, read some of those books, The Anxious Generation, The Opt-Out Family, Taking Your Family Back, and then evaluate what's really best for your kids and best for your finances. But I guarantee you it's not buying children very expensive iPhones that are a third of your monthly budget. If you're an E3 and you have fancy Apple headphones at the gym and you have a nice car, nicer than you can afford, and you have a nicer iPhone than you can afford, and you're stressed about money, like, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Or an O1. It doesn't have, it's not just an E3 thing. But
I bought an iPhone as an O1, ended up hating Apple ecosystem. But
was that your one and only iPhone?
It might have been, yeah. It was like an iPhone, I don't know, would have been 4 back then. But the thing with the iPhone is, and like all these things, right, is like, it's not just a one-time purchase. It's now you got to pay for your data. Now you got to pay for a cell phone plan. Now you need a case for it. Now you need a screen protector. Now you need a charger for your car. Now you need a charger for your home.
Because they keep changing the cords.
They keep changing the cords. At least they've gone to USB-C, like all us Android people have been on for years now. You're welcome. But it's never ending. Just little micro expenses here and there, but it adds up so much and you can't afford it. I'm sorry. That's the situation. Yep. If you're broke, if you're behind, if you're in credit card debt, you have to stop spending money. And that's hard to hear sometimes, but that is the only way in the short term that you are going to get out of the situation that you created. And you probably created it unconsciously. Like, most people don't set out to say, I want to be broke. I want to be stressed. I want to be behind on my finances. I want to not open up the email when the credit card statement comes. I want to not check my USA bank account because it's in the negatives. But in the short term, the way that you get out of that is being conscious about your money, acknowledging what's going on, acknowledging the problem. I mean, it's kind of like the first step of any 12-step program. Like, you are the problem. And once you admit that, it's so liberating because you're like, if I'm the problem, I'm also the solution. And it starts with cutting expenses, start saving the difference, and getting out of debt. And once you've done those things, once you've applied your emergency action procedures, like when I used to fly C-17s around the world with Jamie, we would have to memorize these boldface procedures, which are emergency action things that you have to do without reference to any checklist. You just have to memorize them and act on them. And for you listening to this podcast right now, if you're broke, if you're behind, if you're in credit card debt, if you're not getting ahead, if you have been active duty or in the military or a military spouse for, I don't know, let's say a year, maybe 2, and you don't see your net worth going up, then you need to apply these emergency action procedures. And that starts with cutting your expenses, start saving the difference, and getting out of debt. Now, long term, you're going to have more success if you increase your income, start spending on what's important to you, and maintaining a healthy savings rate to build wealth. But in the short term, you got to take some drastic action. And you have to, like we talked about in bullet point number 2, you have to create friction for your spending, and you have to make savings. You have to make accumulating cash assets easy and automated so that you don't have to think about it and you don't have to make a choice. I mean, Jamie, people are convinced that they'll always be poor. They, especially if you came from an impoverished background or a middle class or lower income background, you might get this idea that you think it's your lot in life and, we'll never be wealthy. We'll never be rich. We'll never accumulate any wealth. But if you're in the military, you have a unique opportunity to move rapidly up the wealth ladder. You're never going to be homeless. There's always housing available. And while you're active duty, you're never going to be homeless. And you're never going to have healthcare expenses, maybe a onesie twosies here and there if you really screw up and you go out of network and for a procedure that wasn't pre-approved or whatever. But in general, you're never going to have any healthcare expenses, and you're not going to lose your job without a lot of warning. With all those things going for you, a lot of the things that people complain about, I can't get ahead because of X, Y, and Z in the civilian world, you just don't have those excuses. I'm sorry. You have to come up with different excuses, and I don't want to hear them. I just want to help you get out of debt and get your financial house back in order.
There was a couple quotes I wrote down, Spencer, that I think are really good for this conversation I want to share. I think they're maybe from the Craig Rochelle Leadership Podcast, but I don't remember for sure. But one of them is, life begins just outside your comfort zone. And what we're asking you to do here is to be uncomfortable with your finances and your current state, because it's not working. If you're stressed about money, what you're doing is not working. So the only way to get better is to introduce a little bit of discomfort. Just like lifting weights at the gym for the first time, it is designed to be uncomfortable so your muscles grow, they tear, they rebuild, and they grow. Another good one is, you have to be careful about game selection because you can win at the wrong game. Mm-hmm. And so if your goal in money so far has been to win at the game of impressing a neighbor or impressing your coworkers or to impress the guy that you're dating or whatever, but you're stressed about money, you're winning at the wrong game. And you can choose to stop that today.
I love game selection, Jamie, because I think that's so important. And people don't realize that they have a choice in what games they play. And this goes back to number 1, deleting your social media apps. The games are being fed to you and you think you have to play these games, but it's a game created by advertisers so that you spend money on the things that they want you to spend money on. You can opt out of that. You can choose to not play that game and play a different game, which is called build the life you want, save for it, and become wealthy so that you can be a positive influence on your friends, your family, the world, your loved ones, your church, your community. And it's just such an empowering message that I don't think whenever I talk to people that are struggling with their finances, a lot of times it's like, the other day, it was their BAH was $2,000, but they were spending $3,000 on housing. And it was like, and the budget was tight. And I was like, could you use an extra $1,000 a month? And they're like, yep, sure could. I'm like, I don't know how to say this other than to point at the most glaring thing in your budget here, which is $1,000 more than the United States government has said you should be able to find housing in that area for that cost. I know that's not always true. But there are opportunities. Sometimes I asked, what about moving on base? Oh, the wait list is very long. Well, how long have you been there for now? Only a year. Okay, well, how long are you planning to be there? Well, he'll probably get extended, so it'll be 5 or 6 years. Okay, well, get back on that wait list because you have time. You have time to play.
It doesn't have to be perfect, but we see stories like the recent one on one of the Reddit forums that we were texting about, Spencer, where someone can't sell their house. They're trying to move away from Hawaii, military family, can't sell their house because the HOA keeps going up. That family made a choice to buy in Hawaii, thinking it was going to be a great long-term investment for them. Maybe they overspent, maybe they didn't. Maybe on paper it was a great thing. No one can predict HOAs going up. I get it, but every choice you make has consequences. One of those is that sometimes you overspend, and you can do it. You can take that risk, but sometimes it's going to bite you in the butt. And, Spencer, Nick and Majuli talks about the concept of the wealth ladder, and level 1, less than 10,000 net worth is lower class. And a lot of military families start there. They don't realize that they can ever get out of that. Maybe that's where their family was. Maybe they joined there and they think they can never get out of that. and they just assume that that's stuck. But hopefully the stuff we're talking about helps them move up to other levels. You're building skills, you're building communication, you're building job skills and things that are going to make you marketable after or during the military, even help you get promoted and things like that. But your main priority in level 1, where if you're stressed about money and you're, feeling maybe a little bit poked in the chest by this podcast, is to stop falling into traps.
Yeah. I mean, getting married to the wrong person, getting married too young, buying too much car, and just like trying to essentially live a lifestyle that your current income can't support. That gets back to delete the social media apps because you're competing with people who are making a lot more money than you or spending a lot more money than you that they don't have, so they're in debt. Create inconvenience in your life and cancel your subscriptions and opt out of sending all of your paycheck to somebody else, to some other company. Set some aside for yourself. Like, why shouldn't you benefit? It's like the old saying, pay yourself first. Like, why shouldn't you benefit from the fruits of your labor? And, I love this Nick Majuli wealth ladder. So level 1 is less than $10,000 of net worth. Level 2 is 10,000 to 100. Level 3 is 100 to $1 million. And then the levels above that, level 4 is $1 million to 10 million. Level 5 is 10 million to 100 million. Level 6 is above 100 million. Now, most of our listeners, Jamie's, are probably not aspiring to levels 5 and 6, but
probably not.
I can guarantee you that level 4, that $1 million to $10 million, if you are in the military, you are absolutely able within your lifetime. It might take a while, but within your lifetime, you're absolutely able to reach level 4 and have $1 million net worth. I have talked to and seen online so many enlisted millionaires. And then on the officer side, often it's easier because you just have more firepower to throw at the problem. You just have more income coming in. Jamie, you talked about level 1, less than $10,000. That's how most service members come into the service, and whether you're an officer or enlisted. But on the officer side, you have the advantage usually of a little bit more education. So maybe you could argue that you're coming in level 2. Level 2 is that $10,000 to $100,000 net worth. And most of the mistakes people are making here is buying a house you can't afford. There was that example that you just gave, Jamie. I got another one here where they bought a house in 2022 with 0% down, so $0 on a $206,000 house. And now they're trying to sell it and they can't sell it. It's been listed for like 6 months and they're only trying to sell it for what they paid for it. And they're like, we just want to get out of it. And it sucks, but sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and either A, rent it out if you're moving, but then they go into that. And right now the rent is below their mortgage. So they have to be throwing money after bad. And it's like, maybe you just take the hit. Maybe you just sell it for $190,000, learn your mistake and walk away and start rebuilding. The problem, of course, is that most people don't have $10,000. A lot of people don't have $10,000 just sitting there that they can throw at a house. And so I think that's why it's so important. That's why we go back, to some of our other podcasts about it's okay not to buy a house on active duty. And I would say recently, especially with the way interest rates are and the fact that the housing market is kind of flattened out, I have seen way, way more horror stories online of military families that are forced to move due to PCS. And they can't sell their house or they're renting it out below their mortgage. And it's an extremely tough situation to be in. The other thing you want to do in level 2 here is keep working, work hard, promote, move up the ranks, and invest in your TSP and Roth IRA. Build your emergency savings so that you're not going to fall back down to level 1.
Spencer, we were joking before we hit record about how as you build wealth, you stop having emergencies. And I think that's such an important lesson for the listener because when you have that cushion, the stress goes away. It doesn't mean it's perfect, but it is much less stressful when you need a new tire. You're late for work now, instead of it being I'm broke and late for work and my job's at risk because I've been slacking at work because I've been stressed about money and my boss is frustrated with me for not being a peak performer at my personal best that I could be performing. So as you build the wealth, and I'm not talking, you don't have to be wealthy. You're building wealth, emergencies go away. That fact alone should be motivation for you to keep going and make some of these changes that we talked about today.
I remember when I was a second lieutenant, Jamie, and we had just gotten married. We were geo-batching. So I was living in Altus, Oklahoma, going through C-17 training. My wife was down in Houston, Texas, living with some family. One day she drove over a speed bump, little fast and cracked the oil pan on our beautiful $2,200 Saturn L300. Man, I love that car. Leather seats. It was heated. Air conditioning stopped working one time in an Oklahoma summer, which was brutal. But besides that, great car. And it cost us like $2.5 grand, I think. And so she drives over this speed bump, cracks the oil pan on the bottom, oil's leaking out. And so it got taken to the shop, get it repaired. I can't remember how much it was. Maybe like, I want to say $800, but that seems excessive. I think maybe it was like $400 or $500. And we had emergency savings at the time. As soon as she gave me the call, my first reaction was, "Are you okay? And is everything, are you okay? Is everything fine with you?" And she was like, "I broke the car." And I'm like, "It's okay. Like, we have an emergency fund. This is why we set this up." And our net worth at the time was probably negative still. I probably had more student loans than we had assets. But because I had already set aside money for an emergency fund, this was it. This was the emergency. And so I was able to throw the money at it and the problem went away. And honestly, I think that might have been our last emergency ever, because after that point, our net worth just kept climbing and climbing. And within the first 4 years of entering active duty, I was able to build a $100,000 net worth along with my wife. And once you kind of get to that point, Charlie Munger talks about, the first 100,000 is the hardest, but it does start to compound. It does start to grow, and it just creates this flywheel effect where you're making more money. So you're throwing more money into your investments. Your investments are growing faster. Every year, a 10% return on $1,000 is $100. And it's like, okay, great. Like, I made $100 this year, but a 10% return on $100,000 is $10,000. And most military families out there, they notice that movement on their net worth tracker. And I guess that's something we should probably mention too, is this is a great time to start tracking your net worth. And it might be kind of painful, right? There might be some negative numbers in there. There might be some zeros in there, but it can be a super simple calculation, and what matters gets measured, right? Or what you should measure what matters. And this is one of those things where once you start measuring your net worth, it creates that loop in your brain where you're like, okay, is the action I'm taking going to help my net worth or hurt my net worth? And I think that can be extremely beneficial for getting out of debt.
I've been on the other side of receiving grace from my spouse, and because of the emergency savings, something became an inconvenience versus a significant emotional event or a significant life event, where I backed into a tree and broke the back window of Katie's Jeep at the beach on base last year sometime. And it's a relatively new car, and that was not great, but it was like, wow. And she literally said, "This is why we have emergency savings," and extended a lot of grace to me, versus the spouses who, great, well, now I'm gonna have to pick up overtime at the daycare, or I'm gonna have to drive extra DoorDash this week to cover for your mistake. It changes the dynamics of your relationship when there's just a little bit of white space in your finances. And it is revolutionary when you stop stressing about money. So maybe you're the spouse who's a little bit stressed about it and the other one doesn't think it's as bad yet. If this message resonates with you and you're not sure how to bring it up with your spouse, maybe just share this episode with them and say, "Hey, I think most of these things they're kind of crazy, but there might be one or two things in here that are pretty good that these guys said that maybe we should talk about." And you can blame it on us. They said we shouldn't feel stressed about money. Like, I'm curious of what that might feel like for our relationship if next time I back your car into a tree, if that wasn't a big deal because we had emergency savings. That sounds interesting to me. I'm curious about that and see where the conversation goes.
So Jamie, if I could leave the listener with anything, I think that the biggest thing is stop living paycheck to paycheck. Get out of debt. Start building wealth. You can get off this stressful, anxiety-producing hamster wheel at any time you want. If living with stress and feeling overwhelmed or behind is working for you, then keep doing it by all means. Like, who am I to tell you? But otherwise, you're free to make a radical change whenever you want. Your overspending isn't hurting me. It's not hurting Jamie. It's only hurting you and your loved ones. But when you're ready, there are so many tools available. There are multiple success stories of military families who decided to flip the script on debt, living paycheck to paycheck, feeling stressed and behind. And that freedom and financial security is available to you whenever you want it. And it's not necessarily easy, but it is simple. And so many people who are less intelligent, less skilled, less resourced, less motivated than you have done it before. So why not you? Why not now? And again, I don't care what you do. I can't make you do anything, but kind of like Morpheus in the Matrix, I'm offering you a choice here. You can take the blue pill, you stay in dreamland, you keep feeling stressed and behind, you keep living paycheck to paycheck, and life sucks. Or you can take the red pill and you can start to see your financial reality and you can start taking action to change it and to improve it. And this is all about empowering you and your family to start living richly today. You don't need to wait for financial independence to start living like you're financially independent. You have the choice. You can do it. If you need to reach out to us, let us know on the Spotify comments, Instagram at Military Money Manual. Reach out, militarymoneymanual.com. Let us know, and we'll be happy to point you in the direction of all the resources that are out there and available to you. Good luck.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Military Money Manual podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
The views and opinions presented here are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of the DoD or its components. Reference to any commercial products or services does not constitute DoD endorsement of those products or services.